I'm Scott Boffman, and my wife, Lisa Ransom, and I started Grow Compost in Vermont a couple of years ago, and I've always been home farmers, had a garden, we raised chickens and sheep and things, and I dabble in alternative energy. We have a wind generator and solar panels that help power our house, but I've always been looking for something that we could get into that would be a nice contribution to our surrounding area, and to something that we could make a living at. And we just came to us one day, we were sitting on the deck, we thought we could be very good composters. We see the landfill expanding and expanding and expanding, and it's only one of two operational landfills, as you probably know, in the state. Organics are a huge input into the landfill. I would say somewhere 50 to 60% of what goes into our landfills is potentially organic. Unfortunately, once it goes into the landfill and it's covered, it's entombed, especially if it's in plastic bags, it's gone. And we can't reclaim that without digging things up and the bags apart. So as a result, this was just a perfect fit for us. We had to do a tremendous amount of excavating here, and it was, again, just to make sure that water ran the right way and that these pads, they all pitch toward these drainage swales. And the reason that they have grass in them is that any material that would be carried by water in a rainstorm would be carried into these swales, and it helps the vegetation, cleans the water as it runs down around through the property. This is just as a rule of thumb. We start the process on pad 1, and the compost is in its most active state. The bare materials, food scraps, horse manure, cow manure, coffee bags, and chaff. Chaff is the shell of a coffee bean. That's a very light material. It's sort of like confetti. Hay, shavings, wood chips, sawdust, all of those sources go together into a recipe, and it's kind of like making a cake. They are all incorporated and put into about 120-foot piles called windrows. We do 1 to 2 of these windrows a week, depending upon how much material's in. We receive most of our food scraps from basically from Sugarbush, Stowe Mountain Resort, and everything that we can get in between on the Route 100 corridor. And it's just the way we set up the territory. And actually, we have the assistance of a company called Central Vermont Solid Waste Organics Division, and they're responsible for picking up that material and bringing it to us. In the middle of the winter, when both ski resorts are cooking along, see 15 or 18 tons of food. It's a tremendous amount. Do you know what creates the heat in these piles? The process that happens in here is that there are all these little critters called microbes, and they're little bugs. The whole reason that compost works is that we're feeding the bugs. Our job is to create the perfect environment. What creates that environment is a combination of nitrogen and carbon. Carbon are things like woody type products, chips, sawdust, things of that nature. Food scraps, straight nitrogen. And to give you an idea, you're looking for a ratio of, say, 20 or 25 parts of carbon to 1 part nitrogen. We get burlap bags from Green Mountain Coffee, which are along our carbon source. Hay is a good carbon source. This center bay here will be a large wash bay with a recycled type wash water system in it. And the idea behind that is that we can wash out these compost only, because they come in and you dump the food scraps out, but there's still some stuff in there. And we want to be able to wash those out. And again, getting back to sustainability, we want every single bit of nutrition that we can get out of this material. So we don't want to be washing food scraps and things out behind the building. We want a system that will let us wash that into a big catch basin. I myself physically bring in 80% of the material that comes on to site. There's a variety of stuff here. Obviously a lot of fruit, vegetables. Central Vermont Solid Waste guarantees us a less than 5% contamination rate. A coffee cup, plastic coffee cup top or straw. One thing that's a real pain for us are the fruit stickers. Unfortunately, that they're made of plastic still, and we take meat and seafood type. What I love about this process is how once we get started to figure out our inputs, that it really takes care of itself. With a little bit of care. Compost is just so vital to our existence, our community. And it sounds a little corny, but It really is. I mean, we appreciate it. We've grown up in Vermont. We understand gardens and agriculture and things, but there are people that don't know where so much of the food that they eat comes from. And to be able to take the material that in the past has been considered a waste or would have gone into the landfill, to put it together and to make something as viable as this compost is a wonderful thing. It takes close to a full year to make really good compost. Notice that the piles are much smaller, and that what one would expect as things are decomposing and those little microbes or millions of little employees are working away, the piles reduce. Somewhere between a 40 to 50% reduction. You won't find a food scrap, or if there was a ham or something in there, or anything like that, a shellfish, it's gone. They get eaten up very quickly. Basically, the whole idea behind compost is that we're taking all these products and putting them together, ending up with an end product that has a slow release of material into your garden soil. We pick out any little pieces of, if they're PLU labels or other little things in there, and then actually introduce the stuff right back into the beginning of the process again, because it will just continue to break down. So there's very, very little waste. These come from the coffee bags. They don't break down because they're nylon. So these come out in the screening process. We have to pull these out. This is the majority of the waste that we see. We bag it. We have it in 20 and 40 quart bags. We're actually presently bagging that stuff by hand. Shovels, and haven't done it yet, but have future plans for covering the whole back of that building with photovoltaic panels to hopefully power that building. It's just an economic thing right now, but that would really help make things sustainable, because a couple of other neat things that we're not presently doing but that we're looking for in the future is that with all these compost piles running at probably a minimum of 140 degrees constantly, there are operations in the state that actually trap that heat or take that heat and use it to heat their facilities. And they do it by putting, there are different processes. Normally, the one process that I've seen, the compost is in a large building, and the heat rises off of the compost and is picked up in big collectors that heat hot water. But so we have a couple of pieces of equipment that we selectively run on veggie oil that we pick up, and that's a neat thing to do. It really helps. It cuts down on fuel. We are not doing anything with Washington West right now, which would be Harwood. We are presently working with the solid waste district to make that happen, and we've been working on that for a while. So we raise chickens for egg-laying. We do meat birds. We usually do 100 meat birds a year, and we used to do more. And with this business, it's just a lot to process them. So, and then we have sheep. Use the wool and breed some sheep. In the past, we had goats.